Hi, guys. Welcome to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. This is Vevna Forrow. Yeah, let's get started.
Okay, guys. So previously on the podcast, I was discussing, ways to improve your writing and to grow, as a writer. Workshops, a huge thing that a lot of writers attend. All kinds out there across the globe. You can hop into them again, virtually or in person. Just the other day, I'll share. I was browsing online. There's like the Cleaver magazine. I think that's what they're called. And they had this fun one called Ass in the Chair. That's what it's called. So basically, it's like a time you set aside. And I can't remember how long it was. Was it like 60, 90 minutes? Or it was a short window. And you sign up, you dedicate time, to just sitting and writing. And I really think that's a cool thing to have. I feel like, if you're doing that with a group of people, it could be friends, it could be, through a workshop. But if you're all together, just writing, sitting, you're bound to, I feel like it really sets, a goal for you, a challenge. And I think that's really good. They also had some yoga ones, I think other sessions and types of events on their calendar. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So do some browsing. You'll find a lot of different workshops out there, a lot of different events. Not all are paid. There are some, free ones out there. So, you totally just have to take some time to search. I gave some links in the previous episode in the bottom of descriptions. So be sure to check those out. And so just some things I want to clarify before we dive into the next question of the day here, which you can see. I mentioned on that past podcast episode that I personally didn't take any, writing workshops or anything like that. I guess I did have there was this program I was part of briefly in elementary school, like way back when I was little, and I don't remember what they call it, but it was dedicated it was geared towards just those who, got good grades, who paid attention in class, and who were, really focused on that stuff. And we got to go on some cool field trips from time to time, and one of them was this event. I can't remember if it was on site at a school or college, but I believe it was. I remember there was white rows of chairs and whiteboards in most rooms. And we got to pick from a list of events that we wanted to sit in, and there were different speakers and things like that. I remember there might have been some writing sessions or some other topics. The only one I remember the most is the one with Gary Harbo, who is a cartoonist, and I, again, absolutely loved cartooning my whole life. Also was a huge fan of Bruce Blitz growing up, and but that was so cool. I got his autograph, Gary Harbo's, and saw his drawing and everything. So very cool experience. But there were definitely some other events throughout the day they had us partake in and have lunch, and there were kids from different schools in Minnesota and stuff. I don't remember what they called it, but I never forgot that experience. And also, I did mention, I didn't land any jobs in my major, which is true. I did get, however, potential, like, near very close offers. I just, ended up moving and made a decision to move instead of, relocate to a state away from my fam. So I think, that was a tough decision personally. I share my personal experiences on here. But yeah, instructional technology and instructional design, instructional writing, I think that's a really cool field. My major really ties into that. So I would say, sometimes you do a degree and you may have loved it, but, the workforce changes, right? Technology evolves just like that. We see, for example, AI changing jobs. We see a lot of processes get, tipped, right, or turned over to new things. In the next 5 to 10 years, 15 even, things are going to look completely different. But I think that human aspect of human beings. I think you can't, of course, get rid of that. But yeah, sometimes I have friends in the writing community who I know are, going back to school or doing a new degree, doing some courses. Even it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-fledged degree. You can take some classes, do a couple courses on things that interest you, and go from there. Sometimes, I personally really loved the degree I chose. It really tied into things I loved. I'm passionate about design, writing, and creating. And also they, added some technical management courses I have, done in the past. Like I did a 2-year technical management degree and some tech courses. But writing and art has been, something I've always been really passionate about. I would say more so I've done more art than writing in my life, though. But I love both, parts of those worlds. I feel like, again, the world always needs art and writing. And, yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to share that, I think we all have, a lot of, decisions in life as we grow older, and you may notice the question of the day. So, is it too late for me to start submitting to literary magazines and journals? Am I too old? So again, I mentioned this on the past podcast episode, or may have touched base on it a little bit. You can start just like courses, workshops, changing your career path. You can start at any age. I'm going to share an example with you guys, a prime example of this, by the way. So, we had a poet in the community, Sarah Dasgupta. That's SarahDasgupta. She started, I believe, in 2023, her writing journey. I mean, she in the past, I believe, was an English teacher. But, she, prior to around that time, what prompted her to get started into writing and everything, submitting to lit mags and journals, she, had faced an accident. And, she really didn't start doing a lot of heavy submissions to lit mags and journals and everything until she was about 80 years old. So that's amazing. And today she's been published in, I think, nearly over 150 places. We did a very fun feature spotlight, like Q&A type podcast interview episode with her back on Hummingbird Blink. It was episode number 129. Now, it may say February 17th, 2024, but the episode was originally published back in 2023, July 26th. We had to, at one point, repost a couple episodes to do a title consistency format thing. But yeah, listen to the episode. You can also hear me and some breaks in between add commentary. She has a very cool story again. And so you can listen to her read some of her work on that podcast, episode number 129, and look that up. Actually, I can link it below in the description if you guys are interested in listening to Sarah. And also, we have a Q&A interview out in our Substack. You should totally check out number 14. That one was in May 19th, 2024, and that was featuring a short story, and she was sharing more about herself a little bit further. So, yeah, she is a prime example, Sarah, that you can start at any age submitting to lit mags and journals. Really cool writer in the community. Highly recommend you check it out. There are a couple other writers in the community I know who, for a fact, started much later submitting. I myself, I'm not, I wouldn't say, submitting, I didn't start submitting till like around the time of the pandemic to places, right? So I would say, a lot of writers, I think, took to social media at that time for sure, and shared their experiences in poetry like I did. And and through that, writing and reading, Instagram poetry and doing podcast features on those, some of the poems there, I came across a lot of writers of all ages. Some of them I was aware they were submitting to lit mags and journals, and some of them weren't, as I got to know them. but a lot of writers in the community, of all ages, submit. So I would say there are some places again that have age restrictions, or geared more so they're geared towards younger writers per se, writers that there are some out there that only publish work of those who haven't graduated college yet, or are still in school, or under 18. But a majority of lit magazine journals don't have age restrictions at all, by the way. You shouldn't be, if you're in your 60s, 50s, 40s, or 80s even, you shouldn't be scared of if you see a bunch of contributor photos and everyone's, looks super young. You shouldn't be scared about that, especially if they don't have any age restrictions or anything like that. Or, just go for it. I think a lot of the times we, not just with writing, but in general in any field or thing we're interested in, and it's a later point in our life, I think we get scared of, what others think of us if we start something later in life, or others' opinions and thoughts about starting something at any point in time of our life. Again, you should really do something you're passionate about, and don't wait too late, right? Our time, everyone's time, obviously, I don't mean to make this dark or anything, but everyone's time on this planet is very limited and short, nothing is guaranteed in life, and we should use every moment we have to do things we love, whether it be create a poem, create projects, or, write a book. If you have something that's been on your, list of things to do, just go do it, Otherwise, you may have regrets. So it's important to do it. If you've been thinking about submitting to lit magazine journals and you're like, I don't really know if I should. I don't know. But, it doesn't hurt to try. I know a lot of writers, they don't, of course, you don't get acceptances right off the bat, right? It takes some time. You have to keep trying for sure. You shouldn't get frustrated and give up. It took me a very long time, over, I think, 100 something submissions or so before I got my first acceptance. And and it was very cool. So I think you have to just really, I'm going to cover just this again. So I think what no one else can replicate, again, are personal experiences. We all have what I mentioned this on, I think, Hummingbird Blink or somewhere else. We all have commonalities in our life. We all go through grief, loss, pain, school, things like that. So you can really leverage those personal experiences you have in your writing and work. Of course, you can do fictional spin-offs and use those as inspiration for your work. Again, you don't have to share your whole life with a lit magazine journal, but I think, when you create work around those personal experiences, the impact is there, because those memories are with you, in life, and oftentimes very fresh and still with you. And they could be tied to people, events, places, and your favorite things or activities to do. You could write around any topic, right? But I think our personal experiences are very key to, a lot of things in life. No one has the same exact path, our upbringings are different, our childhood, our teenagehood, adulthood. And, so, again, you want to definitely expand your vocabulary, but just because you use a fancy word or, one or two doesn't mean that work is going to be elevated. You have to look at the whole piece, use your own words and your experiences and really, drive that home, have experience as a focal point and go from there. Maybe you could do that. But, again, any age you can do things. I don't know if you guys would do skydiving. Would you do skydiving if you were like 90 or something, or 70? I don't know. I don't know. There's some things I think we have a fear of doing for sure, but I think once you, my mom, by the way, did skydiving, not in her 60s, but way back, by the way. But I don't know if I would ever do that, but anyways, again, once you do something, I mentioned this on the podcast, once you rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it, it doesn't feel as scary. Once you get the hang of the lit mag and journal world, you get the whole like gist of it, the submission process, things like that. You just want to be careful about scams and things like that. Just the other day, someone was like trying to pretend to be me, sending out emails to even my staff and others, and I think that was so incredibly wrong and just messed up and horrendous. So you have to be careful about things like that. A lot of places, have, very clear guidelines and things like that, and direct communication channels. So you want to be very mindful about that, and just be cautious. Do some research, do some digging. There are a lot of places that do some awesome shares on things like that, events coming up in the community. Lit Mag News, that is one, Becky runs, really awesome, very thorough, a lot of great information there. I haven't read every single post, but I try to pop in there and read from time to time for sure. Very informational, very helpful, and, even it may connect with other writers and, exchange information and, things like that. I know there was a place one time that was they had this thing. I think Chill Subs also has started this though, but where they give you a suggested list. I think they may have a fee structure for this, places you should submit to, or they recommend for your work or something. I don't remember what they call that, but I remember coming across their site, something like that. And other poets had set something up like that, or suggestions of where to send work and stuff in a comment section too at one point in time. But yeah, so any age you can do anything, don't let it be a limitation when someone says you can't do something. I think that, you can, a lot of people in history and time have proved others wrong when it comes to age. So yeah, again, time is limited, so do it now. If you're thinking about it, if something, it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to writing or poetry. If you're thinking about doing something, work-wise, or, education, school-wise, or, skill-wise even, just start doing it. Yeah. I think we oftentimes, have what-ifs in our life, and you can limit and minimize those if you just, keep trying. And there's that song, Try Everything, right? I mentioned that, I think, somewhere. But, when you try new things, a lot of great learning experiences come from that. Submitting to lit mags and journals is a whole learning experience, and that whole world is very cool. Again, so many lit mags and journals in existence, really cool. All the different focuses that some have, and yeah. So, and even if you want to start your own lit mag or journal, and you're, and let's say, you're what, any age, you can just start it. It's a learning process. So at any age, you can totally do it, if you really want to, yeah. So I just wanted to cover that a little bit and share some thoughts on that. Def check out Sarah Das Gupta again, that podcast episode, and the Q&A. I'll plug in links in the description. So if you want to check out her journey, it's a very, very cool and inspiring again. Quite a few other poets, again, I know in the community that, started at different ages, submitting to lit mags and journals and diving into that, realm and a world of everything. So, yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it. So take care, guys. Next episode, we will talk about something back on the lit mag side, I guess, in terms of my experience. And it could be maybe bookstores or, things like that. Do note we are opening back up, at Dippity Lit Mag, by the way, and doing our relaunch and a few other things. We're also doing some chapbook releases at Dippity Press. So, totally, if you're listening to this, check our calls. We are trying to have some different windows and categories back up and running. And some of them, haven't changed. Some of them have. So read guidelines very carefully again if you're interested. And yeah, so next episode I will think. Yeah. So again, sometimes I post some tip articles out on the Substack tied to this. So if that helps you, totally, that's awesome. I will try to do those when I have a chance and more episodes. But juggling Dippity and this, so just doing these when I can. Yeah, the episodes may get shorter if you, or a bit more bite-sized. We'll see. It'll vary. Obviously, I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, take care, guys.